it's just more painful right now due to the amount of stress. So it goes into the neck and shoulders first. The second part is going to go into the lower back. And then the third part, it resonates in the hips. So those are the three areas that I feel as teachers right now, we should be kind of focusing on more so than we have in the past.
We are back at it with episode 156. That was almost a tongue twister for me, but I got it out. Dani Ibara is one of the COVID miracles that I like to say. There's obviously a lot of crappy stuff from COVID, but she was one of the human beings that I got to encounter, and now we're pretty tight now. We're the Dani and the Dani crew. I'm currently in a training with her, actually, over at Yoga Works, and it's been super cool to learn new ways to teach and also to challenge my teaching skill set now. But also, I've been learning a lot as a practitioner. I've got a pretty gnarly low back injury right now from yoga, believe it or not because the yoga teacher injured me, but because I just have been doing a little too much. I've overdone it, and so I'm hurt. And I'm calling this one of those like Zoom COVID injuries because I'm having to do so much of the yoga while I'm teaching. So I'm learning new ways to take care of myself, which is really cool. Speaking of taking care of yourself, I wanted to invite everyone, just before we jump into the show here, Derek, who's my anatomy teacher, and I are hosting a workshop called Nerd Alert, From Knees to Toes. And we're basically going to go over a ton of anatomy from your knees down to your feet, help you work with injuries, help you learn more about your body. So, if you are a student and you are just more curious about how your body works and how to keep it more sustainable in yoga, or you're a teacher that wants to deepen your anatomy, there's really, we've talked about Derek on the show before, we've had him on a few times, but there's really no one else that gets me as excited about anatomy as he does. And it's just so simple and so practical. We did a webinar a little while ago, and you can actually check out the webinar playback for free inside the Danny Pomplin app. Under the Learn section, you can just download it. You don't need a membership. You can just go and check it out. But it'll give you a little preview of some of the stuff we're going to deconstruct in March. And if you can't make the actual live session, you can always go for it, and then we'll send you the replay and all of that. Of course, it wouldn't be the show unless I asked you for a review. And, I just want to thank all of you that do leave us reviews. It really does support the show a lot more than you think. It really helps the show, get seen on iTunes and other places, and it keeps the voice and the airwaves going for us. So thank you for leaving a review. If you haven't yet done so, it takes about a minute or two. Give us some love. And without further ado, here goes Dani Ibara on Seeker and Sage. The double D's are on the show. It's the Dani and Dani show today.
Thanks for having me, honey.
How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm good. I get to spend, some time talking with you, which is always very exciting. And, for those of you that don't know Dani Ibara, she's also a Yoga Works teacher. And we became friends because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
It's so funny, Dani. I had heard a lot about you. I'd actually heard about you through Jeff. If you remember him from he used to do the Yoga Works, the My Yoga Works videos at home recording stuff.
Jeff Chapman?
I forgot his name. I forgot his last name. Anyway, he used to do the recordings, and he would talk about you, and he'd be like, "Oh, do you know the other Dani?" And I'd be like, "No, just because our names are Dani, it doesn't mean we know each other." But
that's so
and then
funny.
I started looking at your online stuff that you were doing for them, and then kind of was like, "I wonder who this Dani girl is," and da 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 da. And then when we finally did get to connect, it was like that and then more.
I know. It was like instant, right? Instant connection. Yeah.
It was really. And you're a Jersey girl, which I'm a sucker for. So.
Oh, see? Are you from East Coast?
No, right? I spent a lot of time down the shore, though. I don't know if we've ever talked about this.
So no, we have never talked about it.
Oh my God. Okay, well, let's get into it. My roommate for a long time in San Diego, she's from Philly. Uh-huh. And so I would go and visit her family over, Christmas and Thanksgiving, and I'd also go in the summer. And so for the first time, I had the experience of like going down the shore for the summer. Oh, so we went to Sea Isle. Yeah, we went to Sea Isle. I've been there a few times. Yeah, it was super fun. But I had a really cool little I guess, East Coast vibe situation happening for like, I think it was like 4 summers in a row.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I mean, that's what everybody does in Jersey. We just go down the shore every weekend in the summer. I mean, that's what you do. It's the best.
Yeah. And it's not like the MTV Jersey Shore.
No, not really. That was a little extreme, but I did watch it. I'm not going to lie.
Of course you did.
A little guilty pleasure.
No shame in that.
No.
So on this week's episode, we're actually just going to talk about the Jersey Shore.
Oh, it's funny.
So Dani, you've been a teacher for YogaWorks for quite a while, but also, we can jump into your yoga story. I know I've had this conversation with you. One of the main reasons why I'm so excited. So I'm currently in a teacher training with Dani and Maty Ezraty. Hey, Sarah, we love you. And this was really cool for me, this experience of doing this teacher training, because one, I'd always wanted to do it because there was so much talk of like the YogaWorks method. And two, I had a high level of respect for Maty. And for those of you that don't know who Maty is, she was, in my opinion, and Dani, you can maybe, speak to this as well. I think that she is the reason why we have vinyasa-based yoga the way that we do, and really made it really accessible to a ton of people. She was one of the biggest pioneers for that. And so I just really respected, her and her work and how she did it and how she brought it together. And you got to learn from her.
I know. Lucky me. And, when I found Maty, I didn't even know who she was. Like I had never heard of Maty. It was, I was pretty new to the LA yoga scene. I was coming from New York City when I moved out here, and I was practicing at Angel City down in Ventura, Studio City. I think that's Studio City. So when I asked about a teacher training, I asked my teacher right away. He was like, "Oh, you got to go to YogaWorks." And it wasn't like it is now. Like there wasn't a million teacher trainings going on, throughout. It was very sporadic. And I just happened to go on to YogaWorks that night, and I saw the next training, which was like a month and a half away, and I signed up. And there I was in Chuck and Maty's teacher training.
What year was that?
I was in 2003.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So then I got to experience like these two amazing, the most amazing teachers, right? Probably teaching in LA at that time. And here I am like learning from them. So it was an unbelievable experience. And, just I connected with Maty instantly. Like we're both dancers. She's got a little bit of an accent. She's tiny like me. And I just like completely resonated with her style, her passion, her fire. All of it.
She was no bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was the real deal.
What you saw was what you got.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's so amazing because I think that she was, in the way that she merged two of the most popular forms of yoga, Ashtanga and Iyengar, and then created something that was not only accessible, but also very educational to a lot of people. I personally, I can't even tell you how many times people said YogaWorks. It's just that they have all these rules. And what people don't realize is it's just a choice. It's an option, just like Ashtanga has rules and Bikram has rules. And even people that are studying like fascial trains and stuff, like everyone has their own set. She happened to put it together the way that she did. And I think it's put together really intelligently.
It isn't. We are known for safe, intelligent sequencing. That's what the YogaWorks method is known for. And then when you have that foundation, right, once you understand how to be a safe and intelligent teacher sequence-wise, then you can start to sprinkle your own little innovations into it. And then it becomes, it's already amazing. But then you get to become innovated with that foundation. Which makes it even better.
So I'm currently in the training right now. And one of the ways there's different languaging with everything that we get in different teacher trainings. And, for students that are listening right now, I think this is really important for y'all to really perk your ears up now and start taking the notes down, because I think this is where we get into like the juicy bits. But really, what blew me away was injury prevention in this, this basic 200-hour training, which I've taken God knows how many now. I think I have over like 3,500 hours worth of yoga education. So it's more than like a master's degree, I think, or undergrad is like 160 in classroom hours. Anyway, what blew me away was in the training, I think, and for those of you in the cohort that are listening to this, I could kind of sense, and this could be a projection, that people were like, oh, he's a teacher. He knows what he's doing in here. And they didn't really realize, like, I am unlearning and having to put on this lens of brand newness, because yes, I do have all this education, but I don't have this education specifically. So I can challenge it all I want, but I'm more so trying to like take it in. And within that, something that you said was the introduction of the platforms, and how, we look at the feet, to protect certain parts of the body. We look at the pelvis to protect certain parts of the body, and we look at the shoulders to protect certain parts of the body. And I had done something similar before, but not with the same language. And also there are a few different details that I missed. So I want you to I guess what I want to hear from you is, because you do therapeutics and you lead trainings, and a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people go to you when they're broken, when they've been injured, what is it that we should be looking out for as we practice, and as we, even as teachers, what is it that we should be looking for? And as practitioners, what are some things that we can do to really take care of ourselves? And what do you actually see? Like, when most people come to you and they say, Dani, I'm broken, fix me, what is it?
It's a lot of things. I think right now the world we're living in is producing a whole bunch of additional injuries for people right now, including myself. I feel, because of the world and how much it's changed and how much we are sitting in front of our Zoom, our bodies, we have like COVID aches and pains that we didn't have prior to this happening. More hips, more sciatic pain, more lower back pain, more neck pain. So, it's the same injuries that I've always seen, right? The major injuries are lower back, sciatic, SI joint dysfunction, which from instability. And then we've got the upper body, which is upper back, neck, and shoulders, right? Those are the issues that I've always been treating with people. But now it feels like it's so much more intense. So as a teacher, I feel like I have an even bigger responsibility of helping students kind of undo what's happened in their body as a result of our world right now. So my teaching has shifted. I have spent, in my therapeutic classes, I tend to spend more time on the neck right now, because right now everybody's neck, right? The sternocleidomastoid muscles, along with the scalenes, all this part of the body is more is having more of how do I say this? It's just more painful right now due to the amount of stress. So it goes into the neck and shoulders first. The second part is going to go into the lower back, and then the third part, it resonates in the hips. So those are the three areas that I feel as teachers right now, we should be kind of focusing on more so than we have in the past. And, as a teacher, it's our responsibility to deal with not only our students and what they're going through, but also taking into consideration our environment and letting the environment help us gear our classes towards what's going to be most beneficial and healing to our students. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hear that in a few different ways. I am suffering as a practitioner right now because of Zoom in a different way. I've got this gnarly pain in my lumbar spine, and I'm hyper mobile. And so I think because of all the teaching that I've been doing and all the demoing, I'm sure I've gotten lazy in there, and it's just going like up dog is going straight into my lower back, not the good way. Like, it's not, I'm in pain, and I actually can't do that anymore. I'm starting to get injured as a yoga teacher, which is kind of blowing me away. But what you just said is is you're right. Like the environment of where I'm in, I need to teach myself to teach different, or even to be a different teacher right now because of the landscape of everything, you know?
Absolutely.
One thing that I did think about, you know, going, like when I think about when I'm teaching classes right now, I don't necessarily know that I need to get so nuancy as I used to. Like, I mean, we would really break something small and teeny tiny down. And I think that for now, just right now, like this is where I'm at today, I don't think that that is beneficial for humans in the room. I think what's beneficial is to get them into their bodies and to deconstruct the areas that are being overworked. Yeah. So you can guarantee in every class, there's going to be some sort of like midline engagement almost at the start, because really you're influenced from where you move to the midline. And then after that, there's a massive amount of gluteal work for me. Always.
Yes.
I'm just always going to do butt stuff. Always. We need it. We're sitting and we're disengaged and it's just not working.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, I've never been like I was going to say something right now that probably wouldn't be appropriate, but I've never been like a butt teacher, meaning like I never really taught a lot of glute stuff. And now, like you, it's such a huge focus.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Because if those glutes are weak, it's not only going to affect the alignment of your thigh bone, it's going to affect how your knee feels. It's going to affect your walking gait. And of course, those are your stability muscles, right? And what you're learning in teacher training is when the hips are not steady, stable, or balanced, it goes right into the lower back. So really the glutes have such an important job in keeping our body functioning at a rate that's healing, right? It's just about what's going to make our body feel better. And I couldn't agree more with you that changing the focus right now and really addressing those parts that need extra attention is not only beneficial for our students, but also us as teachers, right? Because I've got some injuries right now that are completely COVID related, completely Zoom related, and it's a little it's frightening to be this uncomfortable in my body right now. Like, I have so many injuries going on right now that I'm trying to work through. So
I haven't actually been in this much pain in quite a little. I mean, I've thrown my back out a couple of times, and so that's a whole different thing in itself. But like, yoga kind of hurts right now for me. Yeah. Yoga doesn't actually feel really good. Yoga's like, I was, literally just talking to a friend of mine the other day, but like the only thing that really feels good for me right now is going to the gym and lifting weights. And yoga is kind of feeling, and I'm not like breaking up with it by any of that, like at all. I just think that 14 hours of me teaching it a week and doing it is way too much right now.
Too much. Yeah. And plus, I don't know, I've been to your class. I see how much you demo, pre-COVID, I've never demoed this much. And it's like, and now it's like we're on Zoom and, it's nice to spotlight a student once in a while to give yourself a break. But really, even when I am spotlighting, I'm still doing a majority of the class. Spotlighting one pose here and here or there is great, but it's a lot for us yoga teachers right now. So and if you're teaching flow and upper level flow, like, I mean, God, I can't even imagine doing, vinyasa flow the whole time. But what I want to say about the injuries right now and about the practice is that it's okay for the practice to develop and change and not look like it used to look, right? Like I haven't done a chaturanga since March, Dani. And you know what? To be quite honest with you, I don't care to ever do a chaturanga ever again. Right. So it's okay to we have to also honor the changes that we're going through in our body as we go through, years and years of doing this. And, my practice is very therapeutic right now. And that's what my body wants, needs, craves. And again, the flow for me is out. I just, like you, it doesn't always feel good.
Yeah.
So being okay with that and finding acceptance that everything changes, nothing stays the same, and your practice is right there with that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is permission to just show up and be, and it's there is a lot of talk right now of, like just permission to do whatever you want. And some of it sounds really like, made up and bullshit, and people are just saying it because it's the thing to say right now. But I also do think that right now is the time to like what feels really good in my body. And I say this all the time to my flow students, first off, everyone that's in my morning flow classes should really be in my nighttime restorative classes. Every single one of those people, like slow down, all of you.
Yes.
But what feels really good right now is to just lay on props. And, I almost want to cry after every restorative because I'm just like, thank all of you for being here and for letting me be here with you because I get to do this with you. Teaching Restore Online, obviously you're in the experience just as much as you're leading it,
Sure.
I want to go back to, to the injuries. So not only are teachers getting injured and, I have a couple of bones to pick with not only what's going on with online yoga teaching, but the way that they're just cranking out teachers. And so there's so many uneducated new teachers out there because they purchased, a pre-recorded course and called it a day and no one really guided them through that. And no judgments, right? You do what you got to do. But I'm also having an influx of students. I would wager to say that students are referred to my classes because it is, it's definitely not for the jokes. That's definitely not why people are coming. But there is an intelligence of anatomy in there. And I don't use big fancy words, but I'm going to teach you about how your body moves and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And I feel that there is a lot of really bad yoga out there right now. There was bad yoga out there beforehand that was, injuring people because of not coming from a good place. But also it's magnified now because anyone can, you can just pick a teacher training and do it online, whether you really do the whole thing or not, and then start a Zoom class and then call it a day, So I think there's a lot of universal cueing that's being brought out into the world that just doesn't make sense. Like the thought of forcing certain people's bodies into shapes just for the aesthetic of it doesn't really make sense.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I say this all the time. It's not about putting yourself it's not about making yourself look like the pictures in the book, right? But how can you take that shape, if you want to call it, and make it fit you in your structure and your limits and your strengths and all of that so that it feels, and it's not about being perfect in the pose, but there is a sense of how can it feel perfect in your structure, right? Yeah. It's just a different way to look at and approach the practice.
Yeah.
But, about what you said about all those new teachers out there, I think, everybody's going to find their way in doing this. And if they're called to be a yoga teacher, I think they're going to find their way at some point as well. And the people that come to classes, everyone's going to be attracted to people for different reasons. Like people come to my class because it's very anatomy based too. And like you, I like to teach about people's body. Some people, that's not why they want to come to yoga, So I think it's everybody's going to figure out what teacher suits them and what style works for them. And then some people aren't going to like you. And then that's okay too. Right.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I mean, sometimes there are classes that I want to go to because I want to learn something. And there's other classes because I want to go and, maybe chant some bhakti. And then there's other classes that I just want to go and hang out and be a part of a community, So it doesn't always have to be. I think about, I'm in a training right now. It's so funny. I've got a lot of trainings going on.
I know you do.
But I'm in a training right now. One thing that I heard that I think was pretty spectacular is, as you start to step into a practice, to really ask yourself, do I want to practice aesthetic yoga today? Do I want it to look pretty? Because then I can, make my body go into these shapes. That's cool knowing that. What's your intention? Or do I want it to be functional? Or do I want it to work in my body?
Yeah.
Do I want to feel good leaving the class because I am doing the things that you're customizing the practice so that it actually works for me? Yeah. Versus, am I just shoving myself into these shapes because, they look cool? And that's cool too. I never take away from that big work because y'all know Leo to the core. I will get into the front of a classroom and do every press handstand I can, even though the teacher tells me not to, just because I'm like, I can do it.
Right.
You know?
I do. And you know what? Everyone kind of goes through that period, right? They see like all these little shiny poses that they want to practice. And they're like, oh, I want to put my body into that shape. Without the understanding, the integrity, the strength sometimes, the ability. But, it's about the pose. And that's where people are at the beginning. And that's okay. Unfortunately, some people have to figure out the hard way. And, when you're in your 20s, that's what you do, right? You figure kind of everything out the hard way.
Right.
And you get all kinds of injuries. And then you reach your 30s and you're like, oh, maybe that's not working. And then by the time you're in your 40s, all you want to do is lay on the floor with a bolster, right? Like, who cares about chaturanga? Like, I don't care about chaturanga anymore, but it used to be really important to me, 15 years ago. I'm going to do as many chaturangas as I can, right? So it changes like our desire and our ability, and what we need and want and desire from the practice definitely changes as we go through the decades, right?
Yeah. I think the different area and the different practices meet us where we're at as well.
Hey, absolutely.
I'm super passionate about Restore right now because that's really all I feel like doing. That's just, and even the yin training that I'm taking right now, like it's been super cool, but like I just really want to slow down a ton, and hopefully get rid of some of these injuries.
Well, that's the way to slow down. Your injuries get loud enough, then you're like, oh, I need to change and slow and be still. And that's what my therapeutics are all about. Like, my God, you got to come to my therapeutic class one day, Dani.
Yes, I need to.
Saturday morning. Yes. It's like just all feel good, lay on the floor the whole time, and open all the parts, right?
I'm totally into it.
Yeah.
So I guess going back to like the injury talk, people are practicing a lot of Zoom yoga right now, and it is a lot harder to really, dial in looking at someone's body or offering, just different customizations to fit people. Like, it's just harder to do via the way that we're doing it right now. What are, if you were to give us some really clear takeaways, and maybe we can use, just a little snippet of, the feet protecting this and the pelvis protecting this. I mean, that could, whatever way you want to do it. Like, what are some really, both teachers and students, like, what are some things that we can look out for to take care of ourselves while we are practicing and teaching on Zoom?
Yeah, such a good question. And it's an important question because this is what I focus on a lot when I'm mentoring and teaching teachers, is that if you're teaching on Zoom, you're right. You really can't see what's going on. I mean, you can come up and look, but you're cueing. And this is what I really try to focus on in every class I teach. If you're cueing things that are protecting what's most at risk in your student's body, knees, lower back, shoulders, neck, if your cues are protecting those areas, then your students should be sound. Their body should be sound. Right?
That's smart. Yeah.
So like going back to the platforms, if I'm going to talk about the pelvis, like I'm really going to be mindful about how I'm cueing their pelvis so that their lower back is safe. Because I already know that the pelvis protects the lower back. I don't necessarily have to tell them that, but I know that in how I'm cueing and how I'm cueing the feet and how I'm cueing everything, I know that I'm protecting those vulnerable parts. So chances are, unless the student is not listening and tuning in, chances are I know that my students are safe.
You're running the defense.
I'm getting ahead of what could potentially happen.
You're totally
before it happens.
Yep.
And that's huge, because it's not just about saying, do this, this, and this. There comes, and this is why Yoga Works is so incredible. And it's taught me how to not only intelligently sequence, right? Put things together so it feels sound, but also it's taught me how to intelligently cue and be ahead of what could potentially go wrong so that I'm preventing some repetitive stress injuries, right? Because who has time to be injured? Nobody. Nobody has time, right? So if I can cue ahead of time, then I know that my students are going to feel good. They're going to keep coming back. They're going to get stronger. Their body's going to work functionally from a more sound place. And I keep using the word sound because that's important, because if it feels sound in your body. And this is also, the student has to have take some of that responsibility as well. Like I can cue to the cows come home, protecting their, in their risk factors. However, they have to also be mindful about how those things feel in their body and be responsible that like, okay, well, she's telling me to do this, but it still isn't feeling right. So empowering your students to then be their own best teacher. You're there to guide as best you can, but then to empower them. Hey, if this cue she's telling me is not working for this particular injury or body part, then I'm going to have this permission to not do that.
Right.
So I think also like in putting that into your student's mind as much as you can to make them also responsible for their practice, because it's a two-way thing, right? It has to be, your students have to meet you halfway as well.
Right. So I guess for the listeners, that are students, for them, we'd be saying, pay attention, feel free to slow down. You don't have to move as fast as everything is going to. Take your time,
totally.
Skip things, and really use this as an opportunity to tune in and listen, and really let the intuition and the wisdom of the body guide you.
100%. And I say this a lot, use your practice as a tool for observation. Right? Observe what's going on, because and we all know this, what feels good one day may not necessarily feel good tomorrow, next week, next month, right? So, reminding yourself that your body's in a constant state of change. And because of that constant state of change, your practice is in a constant state of felt experience as well.
Right. I think it's so important to go into classes. When I teach, I really try to do a very clear lesson. Like, hey, we're going to work on this. And if I can explain this little tidbit at the beginning of a class, like, hey, we're going to work on strengthening this, because when you strengthen this, it helps support X, Y, or Z, and really just kind of, it gives me as a teacher a clear box to stay in, where I'm like, I'm not going to get distracted today because I know I'm going to teach to this. And it also gives the student, the permission to be like, oh, this is what I'm going to look out for. This is what the experience is going to be based on. Here's my focal point for the day, or, here's where I might want to draw that awareness or attention to, because the topic is kind of already out there, and you can really dial that in, versus like there's so many things going on in every single pose, and you don't have to teach or do all those. Sure. You don't have to teach or do all those at any given time,
Yeah. Like those themes are not only helpful for our students, and that's what I like about your class, is that I remember that, like, you tell students, this is where we're going today, and this is why. I think that's so great, because so many people, I think they're more prone to do what you're asking them to do if they know why they're doing what they're doing, right? Because, oh, this is going to strengthen this, release this, and then, maybe my back will feel better. I think students want that information.
Yeah, it's you can think of like you teach a man how to fish, that analogy. It's really teaching the student to become their own teacher, or even to flex that muscle really of inquiry. I think is super important as teachers, right? That's kind of what we're meant to do, is like create other people that can lead in their bodies and in their, that translates into so many different things.
Absolutely.
So I hear some pretty silly things in yoga. This is like, we're going to just create a whole new podcast on that topic alone.
I mean, that would be the most listened to podcast. I think you definitely need to do that. It's the most ridiculous things we say, right?
We'll come back. We're definitely coming back to that idea for sure. I want to know what the most ridiculous cue you've heard in yoga is, where you're just like, what?
Oh my God. I mean, I don't know if it's the most ridiculous. Maybe spread your sitting bones apart. I mean, those are always some, maybe that's not even that ridiculous.
Well, I mean, your pelvis is stuck. It doesn't really, it doesn't grow or it doesn't shorten.
Yeah. I'd have to think about that.
Okay. How about this? Let me reframe it.
Okay.
What are maybe like one or two of the overused cues that you hear that you're like, that's just doesn't make sense anymore?
Well, squaring your pelvis. Number one, right? Yeah. We don't square the pelvis anymore in standing postures. And then tucking the tailbone.
Yeah,
and those
that
are
would drive
kind
me
of
insane.
two major things that are like, don't say those cues. But it's funny, it is appropriate once in a while to say tuck your tailbone if you're trying to get a desired effect in a therapeutic setting. But in a regular setting, when in your standing poses and stuff, it's like those are the two cues that we're kind of trained to stay away from, because students can overdo and cause injury, right?
Right. I think for me, it's the knee stuff, my favorite is like stack your knee over your ankle. Don't let it go over. And I'm like, is my leg going to fall off? Like, what happens if my knee goes over? And, it's really, like you said, it's the desired effect. Your knee can go over. It's going to be okay. It just depends on how much weight is, then put onto the knee,
Right.
and low lunge. If you're going for like a really deep low lunge and hip flexor, and your knee's on the ground, you can shift more weight load forward on the forward facing knee, right? Yeah.
Sure.
But if you back off, you can work on more strengthening versus stretching. It really just depends on the desired effect. And then my other one is like, don't hyperextend. Like, what happens if I hyperextend? I got 7 years bad luck. Like, it's okay to bring I don't know if everyone knows this, Dani, you sure do, but like, we're actually built to hyperextend. Our bodies are smart. They're built for that. They know that. But I think a lot of people will go in and almost scare a room, like, don't hyperextend, or, you can never do yoga again. Like, it's actually not going to kill you. I'm sure if you overdo it, it may lead to injury, but your body can do it. Just ask yourself why you're doing it. What's the effort there? And, if you back off, you might be able to engage more if you're going for strength, right?
Right. And, the hyperextension thing, I do teach a lot of, not to hyperextend, because it's also the demographic in people I teach.
100%. Yeah.
So,
100%.
In your 20s, you can hyperextend and it's not going to affect your body. But you're in your 40s, right? And I continue to hyperextend my knee, then I feel it. And it's not a pretty feeling. So again, it just depends on who your audience is and what the intention is. And there's a lot to consider when it comes to hyperextension, for sure. But it's to avoid pain.
Here's the last thing that's come to mind.
Uh-huh.
I agree. Here's the last thing that comes to mind. When are we gonna run a D squared workshop?
I mean, as soon as possible, Dani. Let's do it. Let's do it. I would love that.
I know a few students in mind who would just lose their nuggets.
Lose their minds, right? I mean, I do too. So we should definitely talk about that. That would be fun.
I think it'd be so fun if we ran some sort of like injury informed workshop, or I just think it would be a lot of fun, because now me and you are like family. You're totally like my yoga sister.
Exactly.
And then there's just a couple people that are just like waiting for it.
Yeah, I think we should definitely make that happen.
I have to say, Dani, as I've said before, and multiple messages, and and even getting to know you, I never thought that I would be able to take the training that I wanted to with Yoga Works, and I never had time for it when this is like one of the COVID blessings that I say, is I never had time for it, because I was always teaching or running my own training. And now that I do have it, and when I found out it was you and Sarah, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I legit reached out to the teacher training team and I was like, I'll do whatever it takes to get into that specific one. Cause I wanted to be around y'all. You're both are very smart. You're very grounded, sarcastic, which I love. And then bring out the Jersey girl in you.
I mean, sometimes she comes out, I'm not going to lie.
No, but it's been a really humbling experience. There's always so much that we can learn, and I don't ever want to get stuck in my own ways. And it's just been cool to be in that space, and to see you facilitate is really, really, really cool.
Thank you, Dani. I appreciate that. I admire you for taking this training, because when you've been doing something the same way for a long time, it's like, oh, now you're going to add all this other information. And it does get jumbled in your head. Every time I take a training, it takes a few months to like really understand how I'm going to integrate this new information into how I'm already teaching. It doesn't happen instantly. you know, you might find 6 months down the road, you're like, oh my God, I figured it out. Like I know how to integrate some of this. And then what you're offering then just becomes that much more amazing. And that's the best thing about learning all this new stuff. We're about integrating it now, but it's just going to
totally taking the things that work. Yeah. The things that work for me and that feel good in my body. And so far, you know, like, I don't know that I would have loved it as much if I didn't have my back injury right now, because it's forcing me to go a lot slower and do things on the ground and do things on the wall. And, you know, like that's normally not my go-to. And right now that has been, it's been really, really great.
Yeah. And, you know, just to say this for the new people in the training, like the people that aren't teachers, like it's okay. You're not going to get all this information, right? We keep reminding everybody of this because I think that when you do this for the first time, you remember your first teacher training, it's like so overwhelming. It's like, how am I going to remember everything? You're not. Like no one can, right? Yeah. You know, to share a little something, I went through my 200 with Chuck and Maty, and then 3 or 4 years later, I assisted Jean Heilman in my first assist in her teacher training, in her 200. And it was the first time I heard Jean say, don't square your hips. I hadn't heard that. Like I missed that part in my teacher training. And that was 4 or 5 years later that I'm like, wait, what did she say? Right? So it's like, that's what's going to happen to every single person that goes through this teacher training. When you're ready to hear it, you might hear it 1,000 times before you're like, oh my God, did I just hear her say that? Right? Because it'll finally make sense. And that's the coolest part. So constantly just trusting the process. Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited to continue this journey together on this training and to continue to learn from you and take some of your class. Now I have to take some of your classes.
Well, first of all, if you've got a back injury, you definitely need to be in my class tomorrow morning at 9:30 if you're not working.
I'll be in training, but
Oh, that's right. You're in training. You're not in Yoga Works. You're probably in your other training. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm in another training right now. God, but I will the week after. I'll really be with you. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Absolutely. But get in there for sure.
Well, Dani, I'm so glad to be on this journey with you. And again, another COVID blessing. And thanks for your time and your wisdom on the show with all of us today.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me, love.
Yeah, thank you. Until the next Seeker and Sage, this is Dani and Dani saying peace out.
Peace out.